Hey you, I'm back. Yay! I promised you that I would be back. I know I haven't been on this for since April, May, June, yeah, 2 months or something like that. But I did say we were going to talk about the mother complex, and I always keep my promises. Maybe 2 months later, but hey, so here we are. So welcome back. I was inspired to start it again from a friend of mine, a new friend that I'm getting sidetracked. But there's this group on TikTok that I go in their lives every day, and then we got to talking, and I met some nice people there, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty chill. And so she was listening to my podcast yesterday, and she was telling me, how wonderful it was, and don't stop, and for a while there, I was in the back of my head, I was maybe I should stop, nobody gives a shit and all this stuff. But then she inspired me to do it. So thank you, Lori. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So the mother complex. So if you've been living under a rock, you would have heard about the Crash documentary on Netflix regarding McKenzie Shirilla and her parents and what she did and all that stuff. Well, I, amongst 50,000 Americans, went through that rabbit hole. And me being the true crime aficionado, is that how you say that word? Finiciado? A fan. I'm just going to say a fan because I can't say that word. Fan, because, hello, I am a victim of a crime. I've been through a criminal investigation. I've been through a criminal case. I wrote a victim impact statement, so I know, that. Plus, I worked at the DA's office in 2022, so I know behind the scenes of that. And that was my dream job. That was a lost opportunity that I had. I was actually offered the paralegal position at the DA's office, and they went through a whole criminal background. And I'm not a criminal, I don't have anything. But I did withhold information on my initial application because I wanted it so bad. I wanted that job like nobody else's business. I knew I would be perfect for it. I am a victim of crime. I can sympathize with the families of victims, the victims, because I am a victim. So I wanted it so bad I could taste it. There were questions on there like, have I ever lived with someone who's been arrested? Have I ever tried marijuana? All that stuff. And I said no. And because for fear if I did say it, then I would be rejected. But the opposite became true. So that's grief in and of itself. And I was devastated when I didn't get that job. And I went through a period of grief, and I went through a period of depression for about a year. But anywho, back to my mom. So the reason why I brought up Natalie Shirilla is because my mom was the total opposite. And after seeing that documentary, I thank her for that. Thank you for being so strict on me and so hard on me. And because the opposite I saw in real time and real life. Natalie Shirilla wanted to be her daughter's best friend. And in my opinion, she seemed to idolize her. Essentially, she wanted to be her. And as a result, she never parented her. The girl never heard the word no. Okay? That wasn't in her vocabulary. She had no discipline, nothing. She was like a wild animal. A dog or something that, could do whatever the fuck she wanted, and it was okay. And her mom was like, oh my God, Kenzie, how cute. Oh my God, really? No, she didn't say that. Oh my God. I totally understand why you were so mad at her and bullied her and stuff. And Kenzie, oh my God. Really? First thing my mom instilled in me, okay? She said, I am not your friend. First and foremost, I am your mother, and you must respect me. Period. End of story. That girl does not have an ounce of respect in her whatsoever. Neither does her mom. I don't know what the story is there, but my mother, first, she didn't protect me against my stepfather. That was back in the day when, you know, the parents didn't protect their children. They just let the discipline happen and let the abuse happen. And, you know, they're in the background silent, not doing anything. Because that's how they were raised. That is totally wrong. For a lot of years, I was angry at my mother for doing that. But it was like a hush-hush. You know what I mean? It was like, we didn't talk about it. I went up to her, I think I was like 13 or something like that, when I actually told her. I think it was younger than that, but I don't remember. The details are fuzzy, but I actually told her what was going on, and she didn't believe me. That hurt. And at that point, I realized that she wasn't going to protect me. I tried telling my grandma. She didn't believe me either. I told my parents' roommate. I think she was 20 at the time. She didn't believe me either. So I was fucked, basically. Yeah, I was SOL. It hurts me a lot. It really does. I didn't deserve that. I didn't deserve the things that were happening to me. It took me a lot of years of therapy to go through that and come out on the other side smiling, still standing. And I think looking back on it now, I think the reason why I went from that chaos to my marital chaos is because I was used to it. That's what I was used to. Not being protected from my parents and not being protected from my husband. Same thing. Same thing. It just, circle keeps going around and around and around. You know? And I was angry at my mother for a lot of years. And I had resentment, as I should, as anybody should in that situation. You had resentment. You had anger issues. You had depression. All that stuff. And it's not pretty, and it's not... If you have not gone to therapy and worked through that sort of thing, you cannot begin to imagine the type of freedom that comes with that. From essentially, I'm a visual person, so I talk in metaphors. So imagine pulling your guts out from the depths of your body and then pulling them out. Digging deep into something that you haven't touched in years. And see how much of a different person you are after that. How much freedom you have. Because for a lot of years I felt not loved. I felt punished in a way. I felt dirty. I felt unlovable. Because why didn't anybody protect me? Why didn't, when I spoke up and finally said something, nobody believed me? And that's a hard pill to swallow. Yeah. My mother was always critical of me. Always. My whole family is critical. They criticize everything. To the clothes I wear, to the way I speak, to... That's how she was. Total opposite of Natalie Shirilla. Natalie Shirilla didn't give a fuck about anything. She just wanted a best friend. She wanted a mini-me. You know? And I guess in a way my mom was like that because she had an idea of me, her expectations of what she wanted me to be, and I didn't fall in line with that. And so she criticized everything I did. It just became a normal thing to be criticized, you know? For a lot of years, I had her voice in the back of my head with every decision I made, because she made it to the point where, you know, who was I? Who did she want me to be? I had to question everything. What shoes I wore, or like any decision that had to be made. I would wonder her because I didn't have a voice of my own. So I was used to that as a kid. I hate saying that because if I say it out loud, it sounds gross, disgusting, and it just disgusts me, and I just want to have no part of it whatsoever ever again. I don't want to go down that road ever again. I don't want anybody to criticize me. I don't want anybody to say what the fuck I can do and what I can't do. You know, go fuck off. Because that's absolutely not who I am right now. If you tell me what to do, I will say fuck you in your face. I didn't have that as a kid. All I said was, okay. My voice was gone. I didn't have no voice. I didn't have no thoughts, I had no feelings, nothing. And if I did, then, you know, fuck you for having them, because that was my fault. If I felt a certain way, if I felt angry, if I felt sad, if I felt depressed, if I felt anything, it was my fault. You know? Well, if you hadn't have done this, then, you know, you wouldn't have felt that way. Ugh. So, when I hear about Natalie Shirilla and how she treated her daughter like a friend versus my mom, which she treated me like a jail warden, you know, it's fascinating to me because I don't understand. How can a mother do that? How can a mother treat her daughter like a friend? When my mother treated me differently. Way different than that. So it kind of fascinated me, and I went down the rabbit hole. Plus, true crime always fascinates me anyway. So, but for the longest time, I had her voice in the back of my head, judging me, criticizing me, to the point where I second-guessed myself. For a lot of years, I second-guessed my decisions. It's what I was used to, you know? And, right now, I choose to have a relationship with my mom, despite that. But I know I have boundaries with her now. I do not let her into my inner life. or I do not let her into my inner thoughts anymore like I used to. Like when I was going through the throes of my marriage and alcoholism and all that shit, I would explain to her in detail what was happening, what he was doing and stuff. Did you know that she actually threw it back in my face? She said, well, if I was a better wife, or I would have done this better, or if I would have done that, he wouldn't do the things that he was doing. Does that sound familiar? And that was giving me grief too, on top of the grief that I was feeling with my marriage, because I thought I wanted a relationship with my mother that she would have my back, that she would be, oh, I'm so sorry you're going through that, you know, what are some ways that I can make it better? I will never ever have a mom like that, ever. Never had it to begin with, never will. That's a realization that I have to carry within myself. I have to realize that. Now I realize it, so I see her for who she is. She's in this certain category, and I can love her that way. I don't have the expectation anymore that she's going to be this loving mother. She's going to be understanding. She's going to have my back, because she never will. And that's sad to say. With my own mom, with my own mother, every once in a while, I catch myself having a voice in the back of my head telling me what to think, what to do, and what to, you know. But then I stop myself. I say, hey, you're a fucking grown-ass adult now. You don't need that shit anymore. You don't need any of that bullshit. You've suffered enough. I'm 50 fucking years old, and you don't need that fucking bullshit anymore. I can let it go. I'm done. I'm done. I'm so fucking done. You have no idea. You just come to a point in your life where you're sick and tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that was the point that I reached back in 2015 when I went to therapy. And I went to therapy because Jim had assaulted me in 2014. We had been kind of estranged to begin with anyway. We were in separate bedrooms. We weren't the typical marriage. So after that happened, then I met somebody. And I met somebody through a mutual friend, and we started dating. And that's another story for another time. That fucked me up big time. Because he gave me what my marriage never did. How I explain to you is the desert finally getting a rainfall, if that makes sense. So we trauma bonded, essentially, because, you know, he had a bad marriage with an addict, and I was in a bad marriage with an addict, and he was abused, I was abused, all that stuff. So we just gravitated to each other. Plus, he was my best friend. He was someone that I could relate to. He actually understood me. He paid attention to me. And not just the regular pay attention, like touching all that bullshit. No, I'm talking about pay attention, like he actually knew what my fast food order was. He knew what my favorite candy was. He knew what kind of moods I was in just by looking at my face. My husband never did that. He never understood me on that type of level. So I gravitated toward that. And I wanted to make that relationship work in the worst way possible. And I did everything in my power to make it so. But he didn't do his part. He didn't go to therapy, or not therapy, but yeah, I went to therapy in 2015, then we dated afterwards. But he never went to therapy. He never worked on his issues. So, in that, he never wanted to pay attention to what was going on, his mental health and mental state. And so I was the only one working on it, and I was the only one trying to make a relationship work. I'm the one that got the job. He lived in LA, and I wanted to move in with him. And so I'm the one that got the job, and he didn't. We just, I don't know, whatever. And so that was grief. And then my mother saw that, and of course, she criticized that. She knew what happened with Jim and I, and she was devastated about that. So, she knew about Chris, I'll say his name, Chris. I thought Chris was the love of my life. I really did. I thought I finally found someone who got me and loved me. But like all the men in my life, it turned out to be bullshit. So, but it did get me into therapy, so that's a good thing, I guess. After that, because I was wondering why. Okay, if I'm such a good person and I have a beautiful soul and all this bullshit, why am the guys in my life pieces of shit? Why am I gravitating toward them? So I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I finally went and put my ass in therapy. And what I learned was, it all comes down to that fucking childhood trauma, man. Everything. You wouldn't think about that, but every fucking little thing comes down to that. And I hadn't dealt with that ever, or I hadn't dealt with my father's passing. I hadn't dealt with my alcoholic marriage, nothing. So I gravitated towards that. Now it's different, though. Completely different. I realize now that in order for me to find a good, healthy man, if he even exists out there, I have no idea if he does. But if he does, then I want to make myself better. I don't want to half-ass it anymore. 1 foot in the door of my marriage and 1 foot out. No, I'm not going to do that anymore. I was starting to do that last year. And the reason why I stayed with my husband, you're probably wondering, why is the fucking chick staying with the fucking husband? Because I had such low self-esteem, and I became comfortable in that, just, again, not addressing it and not saying, no, I don't want to think about it. Just going with the flow and whatever. Heard all these horror stories about dating and guys and how they're fucking assholes and all this shit. So I was like, oh, you know what? I might as well just stay married. And he lets me do whatever the fuck I want anyway. So it's like, he's my roommate. He takes care of me and whatever. Okay, well, whatever. But last year was a straw that broke the camel's back, because there was an incident with my mother. And I do love my mother, don't get me wrong. I really do. But there was her birthday last February. And we were going to go out with my husband and her husband. And so we got a hotel in LA. And we stayed at the Cacado restaurant. It's big band like Frank Sinatra and all that stuff. So I knew she would love that. And it's a real fancy place. We got gorgeous. I was gorgeous. I'm not going to lie. I was really, really pretty, and I got, you know, this fabulous outfit and all this stuff. She looked good, you know. And so we got in a hotel and in LA, and we had a great time, you know. We took a lift over there. We had a good dinner. I even danced the West Coast Swing. That's a famous dance for West Coast Swing. And so I danced, and it was fabulous. The next day, however, my husband, Jim, said we were going to, you know, the next day get breakfast, you know, possibly explore LA downtown, and then go home. No. Jim wanted to go home right away because he was nervous about the dogs, and he was nervous about them. So we have to go right now. And my stepfather, Frank, not my abuser, there's a new stepfather, he's the one who drove. So we didn't get to go out to the restaurant the next day. We had to get everything to go and go home right away. And Frank didn't even get to eat because he was driving. All the rest of us ate, but he didn't. That embarrassed the fuck out of me. One thing about me is you don't fucking embarrass me in front of my family. Or you don't disrespect them at all. That's one thing I would not fucking tolerate. You can do everything you want with me, whatever the fuck you want. You can argue with me, you could disrespect me, whatever. But when it comes to my friends or family, that's a line I will draw any day. You don't fucking do that. Period. And I was so embarrassed. He embarrassed me in front of my parents. He was adamant about going home the next day because he was worried about the dogs. And I've heard that for many, 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 many years. It's not the first time. But I had it. Because he embarrassed me in front of my parents. Before he didn't. It was just in the background. He was telling me, you know, he wanted to go home. But he actually said it in front of my parents. I didn't speak to him for a week after that. Not one word. I was so livid and so pissed that I actually got my ass to a divorce lawyer and say, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to get out of my marriage? What are the steps I need to take? I was that mad. That was the first time that I ever actually went into a divorce lawyer. So I had a plan in mind. I was trying to execute that plan. And what happens? A stroke. A fucking stroke. Fucking figures. Twice now. Twice I tried to pick myself off of the ashes. Once when I got the opportunity, they offered me the paralegal position. And 2, stroke. Imagine that. Twice now. And then finally, after that incident, my mother finally understood the type of person he is and didn't blame me for once, thank God. Fucking miracle to me that she didn't blame me for some oddball fucking reason. But she didn't. She supported me in that. Thank God. It took how many fucking years? Fuck. Yeah, so so now I am here again. Spent a week in the hospital, 2.5 months in rehab. Trying to get my strength back, my stamina. There's so many things I want to do. And my mother is supporting me in that. She's like, bide your time. Do what you need to do. Get my ass out of there. And I'm grateful, don't get me wrong, that he did take care of me and all that stuff. But there's nothing there. He's just my roommate at this point. And he knows that. Even though he wants completely different. But so that's the story about my mother. How controlling she was and how critical she's been. You know, don't get me wrong, I never went without, you know, food or clothing or what have you. It was nothing like that. It was just the emotional part of it that she lacked. But she was more loving towards me than my stepfather. My stepfather is another story. Thankfully, he's gone from this earth. And karma got him good. Karma got him good. Last thing I heard about him, he had a heart attack in 2019. And he was a type 2 diabetic. And so, still at the time, I was still speaking to him. And still was, they broke up. My parents broke up in 2010. And so my mom moved back to New Jersey. Back to Violin, New Jersey. And then they separated in 2010. And then they finally got divorced, I think, like a year later. And so it was nice. At the time, I hated it because I was like, why are you abandoning me? You know, why are you leaving me? You know, I always had my parents near me, and, you know, it was devastating to me. My mom was moving back to New Jersey, and I'm still here in California. You know, and so I was mad at her at first, but I didn't know what she was going through in our marriage. I had no clue. So, but I was still talking to my abuser. And, because I was groomed at a very early age, so I still had that mentality, like, you know, he is my daddy. He's so cool. Shit. But then I went to therapy, and my therapist, like, when he had the heart attack, and he was living with his new girlfriend, and he had a heart attack, and I was pissed off because he wouldn't let me see him for a while because his new girlfriend didn't like me, apparently. And so I was mad at that. My therapist goes, why? And I'm like, and I was like, she's like, why do you feel that way towards your abuser? As far as I'm concerned, he doesn't deserve access to you ever again. And when she said that, my eyes lit up, and I'm like, what? And she, you know, kept describing, you know, the things that he did to me, and I'm like, she's fucking right. Why am I being upset about someone who does not deserve a piece of my life ever? Destroyed my life, essentially. I had to resurrect it myself. I had to come through the ashes of what he did to me. So why am I being pissed off when he doesn't allow me to see him? And then after that, I was like, I didn't give a fuck. It's like the back door opening, and I finally saw the light. And that was freeing to me in a weird way. I was like, yeah, damn, you're right. Like, what the fuck was I thinking? You know, I've been groomed for so long into thinking he was, you know, my hero, or, you know, he did all these good. I never went without. I was spoiled, rotten. But I kept thinking about all the things that he provided for me. He provided all my cars for me, okay? He bought all my cars. He paid for my entire wedding. He, got me all the cool clothes that I wanted, all the cool gadgets, all the, electronics I wanted, all the music I want, movies, anything I wanted. I never went without. But I realized that it wasn't true. It wasn't real. You know what I mean? To me, I look at it as he did this to keep my mouth shut. He did this to, cover his ass, essentially. You know what I mean? So I keep my mouth shut, kind of like a mafia boss. He paid me off just to keep me quiet. So I found out about, he invited me to a party at his girlfriend's house in 2020 in the middle of COVID. I was just like, what? We're not supposed to see each other, right? And then after that, I realized, fuck you, I don't want to talk to you again. So I never did. Cut off all contact, didn't talk to him, whatever. Until my mother is, she looked up something. I think she's a mutual friend of something to do with him. I don't remember how it was connected. But she brought to my attention that there was a Facebook post about him passing away. And so I found out I still had my step aunt's phone number in my phone, so I called her and she confirmed the news. And I was shocked at first, and then I was happy. I felt like something off my shoulders, that he's no longer here. I don't have to deal with him ever again. And what happened to him, like after COVID, I think it was like a year and a half after COVID. I guess apparently his diabetes got to him, and he had gangrene on his feet, and so he had his legs amputated. And so the same thing happened to his dad. And so he died of complications of diabetes, I think. Yeah. So he had both of his legs amputated. And get this, he did have a biological daughter in New York still. She was contacted. She wanted nothing to do with him. She wanted to claim the body at the morgue. Karma is fucking sweet. Exactly what he deserved. Can you imagine that? Fucking so many people in your life that nobody wants to fucking claim you at the morgue? I was so happy when I heard that. I was like, fuck yeah. Exactly what you fucking deserve, dude. Exactly. So I think I'm going to end on this note because that makes me happy just thinking about it. Like, fuck you, dude. You got exactly what you fucking deserved. And that's why I believe in karma wholeheartedly now. Before I was like, okay, I believe in karma, but I didn't have a specific example of karma. You know what I mean? But now I do. So yeah, fucking karma exists. Fucking karma exists. The way you treat people, karma's gonna come back to you one way or another. And you can't stop it because she's a bitch. Sorry, not sorry. Anywho, so I'll come back. I will talk about something else later. And I don't know what we're going to talk about. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please come back. I promise it won't take 2 months later coming back. And I appreciate you all so much. Wishing you all my best wishes. Have a beautiful day, weekend, whatever. And take care of yourself. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.